Manifest destiny and other things. Here we go. Tariffs. So why do you make a tariff? Well, you put a tariff into effect so that the goods from Europe are more expensive than the American goods. There you go, right? And that helps out the American manufacturers, and everything's wonderful and everything's great. It hurts the South because the South are going to have to pay more prices for European goods. And so again, here we have an issue where the North is pro and the South is con on an issue. And so we have the black tariff of 1842. It's going to raise the tariffs, the taxes on European goods and or other world country goods, but mostly Europe we're talking about here, up to 40%. Which is really going to help out those northern manufacturers, and then that's going to eventually drop down in let's see, 1845 is going to drop down to 25%, and you can kind of see here in the chart from the tariff of abominations way back with John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson, and then you get all the way over here to Woodrow Wilson. Wow, that's hardly any tariff whatsoever. Well, we'll talk about that reason in a little bit. And then we get over here to, oh, okay, well, there you go. All right, so exciting. Texas. Well, we got to talk about it anyway. So Texas is, as last we talked talking about their terrible football teams, Texas is now independent, right? They declared their independence 1836. And so they're going to, yeah, look at me knowing that date. Good for me. And so there you have the shape of Texas in its original form. So they're going to be an independent, we talked about Six Flags Over Texas, right? And so they're going to be an independent country for a couple of years here, about 9 years. But there's a group of people in Texas that want to join the United States. Here's a problem with this. Texas is a slave state. And if they join, then they're going to unbalance the Senate, because at this point, according to the Missouri Compromise, right, there's an even amount of northern states and southern states in the Senate, and so neither one has power over the other in the Senate. Texas would screw that all up, just like Texans do that. And there you go. So, but there's a lot of things going on here. Mexico still is not recognizing that Texas is independent. Britain is also putting pressure on Texas to abolish slavery because Britain has figured it out way ahead of us. And, well, there you go. So, and we have another movement here in the United States, Manifest Destiny, which we'll talk about, right? Hopefully. Nope, not yet. That's what you get for not knowing what's on the PowerPoint until the last second. So here we have the political cartoons. Hey, the political cartoons are getting better. We used to have this little bitty snake that says, join or die. But now, I mean, look, it's very complicated. So here we have Texas annexation. And how are we going to get Texas? Let me say that in the last slide. Annexation happened on President Tyler's last day of office in 1845. So in 1845, we did annex Texas. They became part of the United States of America. All right, so there you go. So here's Texas in the middle, the lady, and she's like, "Oh, I love you, and you're so." No, I should read some of it. She says, no, let's see. So Mr. Dallas, that's interesting, Dallas. He says, "Slandered as she is, let him that is without sin cast the first stone at her." So she's slandered because she's a slave state. Slandered means talked bad about. And here we have President Polk, who is the new president, and he's going to say, "Welcome, sister, your valor has won you liberty and independence, and you have fairly won the right to be identified with the land of the brave and the home of the free." And she says, shall the slanders that have been urged against your..." No, that's not a Texas accent. Howdy. "Shall the slanders that..." No, I can't do Texas. I just can't do it. "Against your sisters, sever those that blood flows from the same fountain." Anyway, so she's upset that people are making fun of her. And then, speaking of people making fun of her, here's Henry Clay. I'm going to sneeze. I'm not going to sneeze. Henry Clay, as you know him as the great compromiser, he was the one who did all the other the other deals, and he's going to continue to run for president and not get it. Henry Clay says, "Stand back, Madden, Texas, for we are more holy than thou. Do you wish we will have anything to do with gamblers, horse racers, and pretentious profligates?" How slanderous. And then this Quaker right here, he says, "Softly, softly, friend Harry, thou hast mentioned the very reason that we cannot vote for you." Man, I love political cartoons back then. They're so pointed. All right, manifest destiny. Manifest destiny. Destiny, obviously, your future, what God wants you to happen to you, your destiny. Or if you're a big fan of 1985 movies, your density. Does anybody know the movie? Yeah, okay, moving on. Manifest. So manifest. A manifest on a ship is the log of the ship that has the list of the people and or the material that's on the ship. So it's manifest. It tells you what you have. To manifest something as a verb means to make it appear, to make it real, to hold it. I can hold something that is manifest in my hands. And so manifest destiny, to make my future, according to what God wants me to have, actually appear in my hands. Manifest destiny. So here we have pretty famous 1861, Emanuel Lutz. Title of this is "Westward, the Course of Empire Takes Its Way." And you see the romantic, capital R, romantic way of manifest destiny. And you've got the people out there looking off into the west. And you have the guide, he's holding his children. He's like, "Look, kids, and this is going to be," and right. So, there you go, manifest destiny. Where did we come up with the term? Well, John O'Sullivan, a newspaper guy, he's going to get the credit for coming up with the term manifest destiny. Go west, young man. That's worse, really, but he's not the one who came up with the term originally. He was actually a lady, as far as I know. Let's see. He gets credit in 1845. She did it earlier, much earlier than that. You can read the slide later. But again, it's going to become popular to say that. And so the manifest destiny for the United States of America is going to be all rolled together with we want access all the way to the Pacific. And so at this point we have the Oregon Trail that basically gets to Oregon, but just that little bitty sliver up there in the northwest area. So we don't own anything else. But we're the U.S. of A. We're going to get some stuff, whether we do it legally or not. All right. So, of the Manifest Destiny paintings, this is easily the most recognized, most famous. So this is, in fact, it's titled Manifest Destiny, painted in 1872 by John Gast. And so here we have a lot of things going on in this painting. Here we have the lady, and whether she represents the United States of America and freedom and liberty and manifest destiny. And so she's moving off to the west from the east. And you see here in the east, it's backwards on my little camera here, so I'm doing this backwards. Here in the east, you have I had to look. You have the civilization, right? You have the trains, and then the land, and then you have the farming, and everything's wonderful, and it's all one. And she's got in her hand, she's got the telephone line, and not electricity yet. 1872, not quite yet, but the telephone, actually the what do we call the telegraph line. But then in front of her, notice the clouds are darker, and you've got the evil Native Americans and the evil little animals down here. And she is bringing light to the darkness, because that's what we do in the United States of America. We bring light to the darkness. Manifest destiny. Excuse me. So one of my students from 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, I don't know, I'm pretty old now at this point. She's a junior who got a scholarship to go to, George Washington University or something like that. Maybe not. American University. up there, Washington D.C. area, Georgetown area, and she went to a couple of the museums, and sure enough, this painting was right there, and she took a picture of herself standing by the painting and said, "See, Mr. Jones, it's like a real thing. You weren't making it up." And I'm like, I don't make up what? I don't make up paintings. I mean, I make up a lot of stuff, but I don't make up paintings. I don't know, maybe I do. Okay, moving on. 5440 or fight. Ooh, that's very alliterative. I should get points for using those words. Alliterative. 5440 or fight. Okay, so Britain and the United States jointly own everything here in yellowish, because it's very vague about who owns what. So we own we want to own the whole thing. That's the whole point, right? And so President Polk is going to run for president here. I mean, he's already president because it's Texas, but so this slide should probably go before the other slides. But President Polk is going to run, and he's going to defeat Henry Clay for like the fourth time now the Clays run. But Henry Clay is going to, Polk is going to use the instead of using "Make America Great Again" or change or whatever it is, the "I like Ike" and just different presidential political slogans. His slogan, Tippecanoe in Tower 2. Stop it. Yeah, I've got to move on. He's going to use 5440 or fight. And the argument here is that if you vote for Polk, then he will guarantee that the United States Manifest Destiny, we're going to own all of that from the southern border with Mexico here, which we would call California, all the way up to, today we would say Alaska. And yay! And so he got voted in, and then they made a treaty and said, no, we're just actually going to take half of that. And so the 49th parallel, right? The 49th parallel in 1846, we made that treaty, and there you go. And so now we have the territory of Oregon. They're going to divide that in half, and it's going to be the state of Washington and the state of Oregon later. And then everything north of that line is Canadian, eh? Except for Alaska when we get there, but that's later. All right, moving on. The Mexican-American War. Okay. I'm going to put down my clicker for a second. I'm going to be on this slide for just a little bit. And it goes like this. Texas. It's just a natural reaction. Texas. So there is the Rio Grande, the Rio Grande, and the Nueces River, the Rio Nueces. I guess that's how that would be. And of course, Mexico has not said that Texas is independent. They're still claiming they own part of Texas, but at some point they admit, okay, Texas is part of the United States. But where is the southern border? Well, in the laughable treaty that was signed with at some point, it said the southern border was the Rio Grande. Well, here's the deal. From the Mexican standpoint, the Rio Grande was not the name of a river. The Rio Grande, the big river, and so from the Mexican parlance, it was Rio Bravo, which was the river that they thought it was going to be. And of course, the United States of America said, no, it's Rio Grande, because that's what it says on our map, Rio Grande. And then the Mexican authorities said, no, it's actually Rio Nueces, which is just north of Rio Grande. And so now we've got a situation, right? President Polk is going to send a peace envoy down to Mexico and say, okay, we understand, we've got an issue with regard to this little territory right here between these rivers. So comparatively, it's not a huge deal, but I mean, it is a deal, right? So, Polk offered money to the Mexican authorities for that, and the Mexican authorities said no. Now, the problem was for Mexico is that they had just got out of their own particular war for independence against Spain, and so they were all discombobulated. In fact, in the year 1846, they had four different presidents and like 16 in just in one year, and 16 different finance ministers, and it was just crazy. So it was topsy-turvy, and nobody knew anything was going on. And so Polk decided to, I think he decided to take advantage of this. We also have a situation going on here, not just the rivers, but we've got the territory of Santa Fe, Nuevo Mexico. That's the best I can do. Here, and then we have Alta California. So we have Baja California, right? Baja California, and then Alta California. And Polk, totally big fan of Manifest Destiny, and he wants it. So he's sending parties out to California. John Fremont's going to go out there and establish a base illegally. He's going to establish a base. There's going to be a big trail, a trader's route between Santa Fe and the United States of America. And so Polk wants it all. The story says that General Zachary Taylor, who's going to become president later, Zachary Taylor is going to send a group of troops down to Nueces, and then Polk is going to order him across the Nueces into the disputed territory down here to the Rio Grande. There's a little town down there, and Zachary Taylor and his group reinforce a fort. On the way, Mexico moves in and attacks. Now, the Mexican authorities are going to say, well, the United States invaded the disputed territory first. The United States' argument is it wasn't disputed territory, it was our territory, and you came into our territory. The United States had an advantage, even though ultimately the Mexican forces had a couple of thousand more guys overall in the entire war. The United States just had the better supplies. We had the better ammunition. The Mexicans were surprised by our, what did they call them, the horse artillery. They called it like the flying artillery, because it was so fast, cannons being pulled by horses. And it just devastated the Mexican army. The Mexican army was down to basically nothing when it came to their cannons. In fact, they were using, their gunpowder was so old that the stories say that when the cannonballs would come out of the barrel, they were so slow that the American troops could actually see them coming and could be like, whoop, and dodge the whole thing. That was my Matrix. Okay, moving on. Except with bullets. All right, so, no, for Matrix. Moving on. So the war, it wasn't much of one. And Polk asked Mexico to back off, and Mexico said, no. Part of that, again, was because of the discombobulation of the government. And then Polk ordered General Winfield Scott, Mount Scott was named after him, General Winfield Scott to come down into Mexico City and capture Mexico City, and then ultimately Mexico's going to have to surrender. So in the treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, Mexico basically gave everything up. So everything north of the Rio Grande, which is going to include the states, we call this the Mexican Cession, and so this is the states of whatever we wanted in Texas, and then also New Mexico and Arizona and California and Nevada and Utah and what the little part of Colorado, and I mean it was huge, a huge land acquisition, second only to the Louisiana Purchase, right? So that was part of the treaty. Now the United States of America, because this is what we do, is we're going to win a war, we're going to grab land, and then we're going to pay for the land because we feel bad about it. So we're going to pay Mexico $15 million. Yeah, $15 million for conquering them. Because that's what we do. And obviously, since I say that, that means that we're going to do this again. We're going to conquer some piece of land, and then we're going to pay for it. $15 million. We're also going to, in the treaty, we're going to pay Mexico for some American debts, and we're going to do some other crazy stuff like this. Individuals who are in the newly acquired American territory get 1 year to decide. If they want to stay Mexican, then they have to go south of the border, and if they want to change their allegiance and become U.S. citizens, then there you go. And then let's see, one of the things the United States promised was now that they were officially in charge of what we would say New Mexico and Arizona, that they would attempt to stop the crazy Native American tribes from raiding Mexican citizens across the border. We're talking about the Apaches and the Comanches. And we said it. We're not going to do a very good job of that, but it is what it is. Let's see. And then if we jump ahead just real fast, in 1854 we're going to have the Gadsden Purchase. So the Gadsden Purchase is shown right there, the Gadsden Purchase, and you see that's the southern border of New Mexico and New Mexico and Arizona, and that was basically done to just kind of clean up the border. You kind of see it was the original border was across a river, and depending on how that works, and they said no, it's just draw some straight lines. So the Gadsden Purchase, and now that we have the Gadsden Purchase in 1854, and that's the last major land acquisition in the contiguous United States of America. I mean, we're still going to get Alaska and Hawaii and some other islands later, but this is the last major land purchase and or acquisition. So there you go. And this is good for us because now we have the ability to do trains across that area. I mean, famously, let's see, we're Yuma, Arizona, right? What is it? There's a movie, Quentin Tarantino, something to you, the 310 to Yuma, the 210 to. I didn't see it. In the Gadsden Purchase, Mr. Wilmot here, Wilmot is going to put a proviso in the treaty, and he's just going to try to sneak it in. They do this all the time, even in the year 2020. The senators and House members are going to write a little bitty sentence. They're going to stick it in the middle of some paragraph and hope that nobody ever reads it. I mean, what was that? Famously, when the Obamacare Act was passed way back when, let's see, was it Nancy Pelosi that she was asked, well, what's in it? And she says, we're going to have to pass the bill to actually then find out what's in it. And the response was, no, you could read it, but government, because people do this. They stick these little clauses in, and then if nobody sees it, nobody catches it, and it goes in, it becomes law. And so Wilmot tried to do this. He tried to put in a little this little proviso, which means like one little sentence stuck in the back of somewhere, and it says, hey, anything acquired out of Mexico should be free. Everything should be free land. Hey, okay, right? So no slaves. And then somebody saw it, and then the Senate voted on it, and oh man, it didn't pass. Well, why is that? Why wouldn't it pass? Because it's 50-50. Why wouldn't it pass? Oh, it's not 50-50 because Texas is now a state, which means that Texas. So now the Senate has 2 more votes for southern states than it does for northern states, and therefore it doesn't pass. However, why is the Wilmot proviso important? It's important because people are like, whoa, we need to start actually talking about this, guys. Because what are we going to do with all this land that we're acquiring? Is it going to be free or is it going to be slave? So who gets to make that decision? Popular sovereignty, right? Okay, so popular sovereignty. A little philosophy for you. So John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Thomas Hobbes. We've met them before. Those are the guys that said, hey, you have a little island out there, and you put the 100 guys out there, and then what happens? Well, Hobbes says we're evil, so you got to have a king, and Locke says no, we're naturally, we're all reasonable people, and so therefore we need to set up a system where we have some. There you go, right? And Jean-Jacques Rousseau says, no, we should all just run around naked and run around and everybody will be fine. Everybody's equal in perfect democracy. So the question becomes, who makes the decisions, right? There's a word I'm looking for. And I'm tempted to turn around and look at it because I know it's like right there, but I can't see it. And so, but I can't get it. I'm going to look at right. Okay. No, I'll be cool about it. Social contract. I was thinking of that. Social contract. So social contract is, humans, we get into this contract with one another that says we will give up some rights to make sure that we're all safe. We're going to give up some rights so that we're all safe. The social contract. Okay, so how does that work for slavery? Well, popular sovereignty is the idea is that people get to make those decisions. Popular sovereignty. People get to make the decisions. Popular sovereignty does not necessarily mean democracy. You can have popular sovereignty in a republic. I choose people who then make the laws. You could have an you could have a one-person government that's still popular sovereignty. I pick that person, and that person then makes the laws, or that person asks for advice, or whatever. So popular sovereignty doesn't have to be a democracy, although it really kind of helps if it was democracy. Popular sovereignty, for the purposes of APUSH, popular sovereignty is who gets to decide whether the state, a new state, is going to be a slave state or a non-slave state. So when you see popular sovereignty on an essay question or a test question in APUSH, it means who gets to decide? Who gets to decide? Slave state, non-slave state. All right, I just said that. And this idea about making people decide is going to be Stephen Douglas and Lewis Gast are going to come up with these ideas. Stephen Douglas is going to really run on this, and he's up there in Illinois, and he's going to run against this this guy named Abraham Lincoln, and he's going to beat him. We'll get to that later. All right. No pictures. There's 2 slides in a row. No pictures. Terrible PowerPoint. Who ever did this PowerPoint? Free soil. The free soil. Excuse me. Oh no, that's because we get right because we get it. Okay, moving on. Free soil. Single issue political party in 1848 and 1852, and basically you can see it, right? Free soil party, and so they were for free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men, and they're going to put up candidates for president and Congress, and obviously they're not going to win the presidency, but they do get some people into Congress. It was 16 congressional members, and here's the deal. The last line here, it says the squeaky wheel ... So the phrase here is, you may have heard, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the idea is that you may only be one small part of a group, but if you are loud and obnoxious enough, if you're the squeaky wheel, then you're the one who gets the attention. You're the one who gets the attention. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. I mean, we can argue it's still relevant today. In December of 2020, what was the squeaky wheel on any given week? Well, on any given week, I mean, if we're talking about the 100,000 people who were members of the Black Lives Matter group. Okay, yes, that was an important movement. There weren't really a lot of people involved in the Black Lives, like the actual organization, but when the media got hold of it and said, hey, this is really cool, let's put it out there and let's talk about it every night for 3 months straight, they were the squeaky wheel. And so this is going to go on. Every time something came out about President Trump or President-elect, as of right now, President-elect Biden, that was the squeaky wheel. So there you go, the squeaky wheel. The free soilers were the squeaky wheel, and people really gravitated to, I mean, we don't actually agree with these people, or we may agree with these people, but they are interesting to listen to, so let's listen to them. So that's the squeaky wheel. Hey, the other part of the squeaky wheel phrase is the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but also the squeaky wheel sometimes gets replaced. Huh. Okay. Well, that's kind of interesting. Boil, boil, toil and trouble. Okay, wait. See. Okay, so first of all, you get the reference. Boil, boil, toil, and trouble. You get the reference. Do you know which Shakespeare play that's from? Do you? Okay, you got it. Okay. Are you thinking about it right now? Are you guessing it's not Julius Caesar? It's not Romeo and Juliet. It's not Hamlet. It must be the other one that everybody reads. It is very good. Boil, boil, toil, and trouble. Macbeth. I know, right? Boil, boil, toil, and trouble. Boil, free soil, the union spoil. Come grief and moan, peace be none, till we divided be. Let's see, and that is Wilmot. Wilmot, he's the one with the proviso, right, who says that we should have free lands. This next guy is Greeley. Is Garrison. So Garrison is the one who does the Liberator. He's the one who agitates people with his newspaper, right? He says, boil, boil, toil and trouble, abolition, our condition shall be altered by. Oh, wait, Mr. Jones doesn't say that word. Inward, strong as goats, cut your master's throats. Abolition, boil, we divide the spoil. Okay, so we've got two very anti-slave guys here. And the whole point is that they're putting everything into the pot and trying to get something out of it. Trying to rile up the people and become the squeaky wheel, or trying to solve the problem. Kind of depends on your interpretation of the cartoon. Hey, speaking of easily interpreted cartoons, well, there you go. So this is forcing slavery. Forcing slavery down the throat of a free soiler. So a free soiler is somebody obviously who doesn't want slaves. And so here we have these two guys, and they represent the Democratic Party, and they are holding his head back, and you've got another Democrat over here forcing the slave down the throat. And we know they're Democrats because it says Democratic Platform, and it talks about Central America and Cuba and Kansas, which we'll get to next video, I think. And murder, and the free soiler, let's see, murder, help, neighbors, help, oh, my poor wife and children. It's pretty easy to interpret that one. All right. On a new and exciting and fun note, they found gold in California. Oh man, let's see. So January, do I have the date? Yeah, January 24th of 1848, Mr. Marshall is out there helping with Mr. Sutter's water wheel. And he notices in the water wheel that there's a glint of metal coming up on the water wheel. And so he looks down there and he's like, huh, looks like gold. And he grabs Sutter and he says, hey, there might be some gold in this river. And Sutter's like, shh, don't tell anybody. Because Sutter, his plan was he was going to build an agricultural, megalithic, monopolistic empire out there in California. Because, California's got pretty good soil and all, good climate out there. And so that was his plan. He said, if people find out that there's gold out here in this river, they're going to come and they're going to just devastate my agriculture empire, at least the idea. And of course, in hindsight being 2020, well, he was correct, and they all came out there and they stole his stuff. But the point is, in January 24, they found gold, and Sutter said, "Don't tell anybody." Okay, so the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is signed that same year after January, and so here we have. Oh man, if Mexico had just found out that there was gold in California, but it's too late now. And people start coming out. And so when it was announced, I think the newspaper ran sometime like in March of 48. It ran in March. Somebody mentioned it. And then the people of California were like, shh, be cool, be cool, be cool. But some people, they're thinking entrepreneurs, right? So they start establishing stores where you can buy pickaxes and pans and all this kind of stuff. And so then when the big wave, 300,000 people come over in 1849, we call them the 49ers, when they get here, then all the prices are jacked up and all the crazy stuff. And people they come out, like I said, in droves. A lot of them come over across land, but the problem with that is the United States is a big old country, and a lot of people are going to dive between point A and point B. Another option, if you're in New York City or Boston, you want to come over, well, you can get on a boat. The problem with that is it's 3.5 to 4 months because you got to go all the way around South America because we don't have the canal yet. And so that's a long time to get from point A to point B. Another option is you take a boat down to basically Panama, and then you rent a donkey or a canoe, and then you go across the the isthmus there, and then get on the other side, and then wait for a boat that's coming back up around, and then you get there. So a couple of different ways if you're on the East Coast. But a whole bunch of people, at least half of the people who came over to California were not Americans. The Chinese came over, the British came over, the Russians came over because gold, right? I mean, gold. People were making more in the early days. People were making more money, per day than they would make, in a month working at a regular job, and they're just out there, panning for gold, sitting in the river. There you go. So. There's so many people that showed up in California. Let's see, so in 48, in 49, in 1849, they had enough people to become a state, and so they wrote a constitution. And then in 1850, they actually became a state. We'll talk about that in a second. Underground Railroad. If you're a runaway slave, and you can get to the Ohio River. So the Ohio River is where all the red starts. So. The Ohio River. If you can get to the Ohio River, and then you can get to the Underground Railroad, and then the Underground Railroad will take you further north and away from the bad guys. If you recall, slaves are not allowed to read and write in 99% of the cases. And so how do you get the information to them? How do you tell slaves how to get from point A to point B? Well, you do it through memes. You do it through song. You do it through, literally memes, right? So you teach them songs in churches, because they all go to church. So you teach them songs like "Follow the Drinking Gourd," and so you put a little religious bent to it, and the drinking gourd, and Jesus is the water of life, and all that kind of stuff. But the symbolism is in there. So you think about the Big Dipper. And so the Big Dipper, which is really easy to see at night, it's got big stars out there, and so you can look up and see the drinking gourd, and guess which way that points? It points north. Oh, it points north to the Ohio River. So if you follow the drinking gourd, you can escape. Another one is wade in the water. Wade in the water. I learned this back in, I think, 2nd grade at John Glenn. Wade in the water, children, and God's going to trouble the water. I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but it's instructions to slaves that say, hey, to avoid dogs, to avoid the hunting dogs, to avoid being captured, you wade in the water. It'll give you salvation. It'll give you salvation. Why? Because the water's going to mask your scent. If you just run along in the trees and the bushes, the dogs can follow you. But if you wade in the water will mask your scent. Michael rowed the boat ashore. So all three of these songs, and others and others and others, the original memes for slaves to learn how to escape. That's kind of cool. Compromise of 1850. Hey, we're almost done today. Compromise of 1850. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Do we make these states slave states, or do we make them free states? What are we going to do? We've got a situation here, and so here we go, a compromise. So here it is. California is admitted as a free state. So if you're in California, it doesn't matter if you're above or below the Missouri Compromise line, which at this point, Missouri Compromise doesn't go. New Mexico and Arizona are admitted as states with popular sovereignty. So if you are in New Mexico or Arizona, then the people will get to vote whether they want to be slave states or free states. And that was okay because they're so far away from New York and Boston and Philadelphia and Charleston that nobody really cares, because there's only like 4 people who live over there in Arizona at this point. Texas is going to cede land to pay off debts. So that really weird little hook that Texas had that went north, they're going to chop that off, give it to Colorado, and for that matter, Colorado, and then a little bit of Kansas, and then the Oklahoma Panhandle. So Texas is going to be its usual awful, ugly-looking shape. And then, let's see, Washington, D.C. is going to be declared a slave trade free zone. They don't outlaw slavery, but you can't trade slaves in Washington, D.C. And then the big bad boy, the fugitive slave. The new fugitive slave law is enacted. All right, so here we have a flyer. Yeah, I think it's in Boston. Yeah, in Boston. I'm going to read it. It says, "Caution, colored people of Boston, one and all, you are hereby respectfully cautioned and advised to avoid conversing with the watchmen and police officers of Boston. For since the recent order of the mayor and aldermen, they are empowered to act as kidnappers and slave catchers, and they have already been actually employed in kidnapping, catching, and keeping slaves. Therefore, if you value your liberty and the welfare of the fugitives among you, shun them in every possible manner, so as many hounds on the track of the most unfortunate of your race. Keep a sharp lookout for kidnappers and have top eye open." So what that's saying is, in Boston, they're going to start enforcing the new fugitive slave law. And, well, we'll talk about this. So in the Constitution of the United States, it says, "No person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall, in consequence of it." It says in the Constitution, if you're a slave, they don't say the word slave because we can't say the S word in the Constitution. We talked about that. But it says, if you were a slave in another state and you escaped to state B, state A to state B has to give you back. That's in the Constitution right there. But it doesn't lay out any penalties if you don't give them back. So the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 lays out penalties. If you capture a slave, if you capture a slave, or if you know of a slave, and you don't return him back to the South, if you're in the North, or for that matter, in any other state, I suppose, then you could be penalized. And the penalty could be $1,000, which $1,000 back then, in 1850, is about $28,000 today. So you don't return a slave, that's a $28,000 penalty. Oof, right? On top of that, if you're a police officer and or a watchman and or a slave catcher, you could be paid big money for catching slaves. So there's an incentive to make sure that if you have a slave, you turn him back in to his original master, because otherwise you'll get penalized. And two, you can be paid for catching slaves. Now, we talked about this in the last video. What does that mean for the free blacks? Well, if a free black somehow loses his or her papers, then suddenly he's a runaway slave, right? Because he can't prove it otherwise. In fact, the Fugitive Slave Law and the other laws that are passed to help this out shows that blacks, regardless if they're runaway slaves or whether they're free, if they are captured, then they do not get a trial. They can't testify on their own behalf. They're basically rounded up and put on the southbound train. I mean, they don't have any recourse of action. So that particular flyer, can I go back? That particular flyer here says, hey, and it says colored people. Hey, colored people, you better watch out. If the police are coming down the street, you better not be on the street, is what that says. Whether you are free or not, and in fact, this particular flyer says, and make sure you realize that we do have from the welfare of the fugitives among you, so it actually is encouraging to keeping people safe. Crazy times. All right. The last slide. Well, we did this fast today, I think. 45 minutes. I mean, that's not bad for me, right? Kansas-Nebraska Act. I laugh because it's so awful. 1854 creates the states of Kansas and Nebraska. All right, so there you go. So Kansas looks kind of like our Kansas, and then Nebraska's got that weird little hook, and it's going to actually be like, 3 different states. But Kansas, Nebraska. And this is going to, let's see, now that they're going to be states, then the railroads are going to be able to go through there. We're not going to have as much problem. And then the land's going to be open to farming, and everything's wonderful, and everything's great. And wait, are they going to be free states or non-free states? Because, as you know, the Missouri Compromise, there's a line at the bottom there, the Missouri Compromise, just let's see, it says just north of, what does that say, Indian Territory? Yeah, Indian Territory. It says anything north of that is free. Well, the Compromise of 1850 said, I mean, basically got rid of the Missouri Compromise. So Kansas, which is, its southern border is that slave territory, and its eastern border, which is Missouri, making sure I was pointing the right direction. Missouri, that's a slave state. So what is Kansas going to do? I mean, Nebraska up here, that's, I mean, it's pretty obvious they're probably going to be free state. But Kansas kind of stuck here in the middle. What is Kansas going to do? Oh, well, that's a great question. The people of these two states could, using popular sovereignty, decide whether or not the states would allow slavery or not. So how do you get them to do this? Well, you get them to vote. Oh, hey, by the way, they didn't have voting rolls. So whoever wanted to vote could vote. Which means whoever wanted to vote, whether you lived in Kansas or not, I'm sure it's all going to be perfectly fine. And that we're not going to call Kansas bloody Kansas or anything like that. Oh, no, we do. Good times. All right, that's it for this week. Be good. You know the drill. Bye.